Hi, I'd like to do a video on the cost per life saved in Great Britain through the lockdown. And it's a difficult question to answer because no one can predict the future. But we do have some idea based on the information. As everyone knows, I was totally against the lockdown on day one, but it was not for the point of view of lives lost or saved. It was just totally on civil liberties, that no government has the right to unlawfully detain free citizens without trial, without charge, without having the right to defend themselves. And, the powers of our government are focused on defending the liberties of people, not impeding them. And, I've got a lot of experience with government lawlessness. And when you see governments abusing their power and breaking the law, they've always got an excuse. And the excuse for this time is, well, look, David, we're trying to save lives. The point of the lockdown is to save lives. And, after we've been under lockdown for over a month, now's a good time to look into how many lives have we saved and what's the cost per life saved. And that's what I want to talk to you about in this video. So the big comparable on lives saved is not from ourselves because we didn't, on lockdown versus no lockdown, because we did lockdown, so we don't know what it would be like if we did not lock down. But if you look at Sweden, who did not lock down, you would expect their deaths from the same virus as us to be many, many, many times higher than us. And I did a video on this about a week or so ago, and it was clear from all the information that not only are their deaths not higher than ours, or many times higher, they're actually less. And, I think it provides some information about the folly of the lockdown in terms of lives saved. Maybe we've saved some lives, but the cost has been so ginormous that I question whether it's worth it on the grounds of economics, as well as the fact that it's totally not permissible on the grounds of civil liberties. You can also look at the case of Belarus. There was a lot of press, or British press, criticising the Belarusian president, and they had their football leagues going on after all the European leagues had cancelled, and there was crowds, and the British press was saying, the Belarus have put their people at high risk and they're all going to die and all this sort of stuff. And I think Belarus has like 6 deaths per million through this crisis, and we in Great Britain have 282. So there was a lot of criticism of Belarus, but maybe Belarus were a lot smarter than we were. When looking at Sweden, you can compare their numbers to Finland and to Norway, and those two countries are a lot lower on deaths per million. If you look at Sweden, it's about 200 deaths per million, whereas if you look at Finland and Norway, they're at about 35 deaths per million. So the Finland and Norway are locked down, whereas Sweden is open. However, it's the cost per life saved that's the real question. And to answer this, you have to kind of look economically on what does the British government what value does the British government place on each life? And when they do infrastructure projects like transportation and, healthcare and speed limits and all these sort of government decisions they make through policy, they value each life. And the value they place on each life is about £2.5 million. And they actually place a value of about £20,000 per year of life left. And so if you're an older person with maybe a few years left, that cost per life is much lower than an infant child that's just been born and is going to live for a long time. So with this crisis, you've got to estimate, well, how many lives have Britain saved through the lockdown? We were trying to save a ton of lives. I don't think there's much evidence that we've really saved any lives. I mean, we've lost a lot of lives. How obvious, I would think that if the country had stayed open, I think it's reasonable to say that most of the people that did die would have died anyway. But it's, we've spent all this money with shutting our economy and crashing our economy, and all this money through bailouts of people's income and through companies to try and keep them afloat through the lockdown. And I estimate that we're probably going to end up spending, when the music stops, at least £2 trillion. And people say, well, that's totally outrageous number. There's some reports back in 2008 that the 2008 crisis cost us, at least £2 trillion. I think this one will be worse. So I'm putting 2 trillion in as a conservative number. And that number is on lost economic output, primarily. The government's spending a lot of money on bailouts and stuff, which is significant, but it's the loss of economic activity. So it's like a double whammy. You've got to spend money to pay people to not work. And then once the economy opens again, there's going to be a very real lack of consumer demand. People aren't going to be spending any money. No one's going to be setting up any businesses. Everyone's going to be afraid of doing anything. And it's that fear that the lockdown instilled in the market and in consumer behavior that's factoring into my decision on £2 trillion. So then you got to look at, well, how many lives saved? So Britain's lost about 20,000 lives. So how many lives have we saved? Well, if you look at Sweden, who's lost less than ours, I don't think we've really lost that many, but I'm happy to put a number in of about 50,000 lives saved. And so the equation is £2 trillion divided by 50,000 lives saved. And it's not an easy calculation to make because the numbers are so massive, but it works out to about £40 million per life saved. So if a lot of lives saved were people who were in their 80s, because that's the kind of age group that the virus attacks, we've really got to ask the question of whether that 40 million per life saved, if that's an accurate number. I mean, it could be 80 million per life saved or 120 million per life saved. But even if it's 40 million, that's 20 times more approximately than the British government typically allocates to the cost of a life. And I've been amazed that the media has not really been questioning anyone in the government about, like, how many lives are we saving here? And what's the cost to British taxpayers of each life we're saving? And, I think the government needs to come clean on what they estimate those numbers to be, so we, the British people, can decide whether that's value for money or not. I think they don't want to talk about this because they know they made such a blunder. They've totally exaggerated this crisis. They've wanted to be seen to be doing something, which is locking down the country and violating everyone's civil liberties, crashing the economy so that our living standard declines for a number of years, and then blame it all on the crisis rather than themselves. So I think it's a total disgrace. I think it's a total outrage. I hope British people really get focused on, well, what's all this costing us and what's the benefit to us? Because if we're not saving any lives, why are we still being locked down? So I hope you like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. Let's get the word out there that we're not happy with being locked down because it violates our civil liberties, and that the cost, totally outweighs the benefit. So thanks very much for watching.